Hello, crypto world. Welcome to the Chart Historian. My name is Justin, and on this channel, I delve deep into crypto charts, exploring chart structures, fractals, and patterns. Well, in this video, I'm going to talk about something other than crypto. I'm going to talk about gold. In particular, I'm going to talk about the XAU chart, that is spot gold. Now, for those of you who are familiar with my analysis on this chart, you're probably wondering what is going on with today's chart. I mean, as you can see, it's just ripping to the upside. Before we discuss what is taking place on today's chart, I want to talk about the overall macro structure. It is a repetitive structure. Now, here is the macro structure. Now, I'm going to begin with going back all the way to 1970. So there are a series of structures that this chart does. It starts with what I call A. The A structure goes into B, C, D, all the way to F. This series of structures then repeats all over again. So what are the essence of each of these structures? That's what I want to show you. Let's start over here with A. So this first structure is essentially the beginning of a bull run. In this structure, price moves up. It has a series of bounces or waves as it moves up. That's the essence of this structure. It then moves into structure B. Now, structure B moves up a little more aggressively. It pulls back. It then moves up again and has this tiny little resting spot before moving into the next structure. The next structure, which is C, is similar to B. It moves up aggressively, has a pullback, which is more aggressive, at least I think, than this pullback over here, at least many times it is. It then moves up and comes to the end of this C structure. The D structure is a peak, essentially. Now, here it is lower than E. There are occasions where it moves up higher than E, but it is the first peak, if you will, in the overall topping structure. E is the official topping structure. It's generally the one that has the highest peak. It makes a peak and then begins a decline. So F is the decline and where it bottoms out before the structure begins all over again, going into A, where it moves up in a series of waves. Now, every time a fractal repeats, the timing, the height, and the depth, those are always going to be unique to the new iteration. So it can lend to an appearance of novelty, but overall, the basic idea of the fractal is accomplished. Let's zoom into this structure A. As you can see, it moves up in a series of waves into the next structure. Now, this one was more vertical than the first one, but it is basically doing the same idea. And what does B do? Well, B does that move up where it moves up aggressively and then pulls back, does that correction before moving up. And here's that little resting spot before moving up into the next structure. Now, fractal C, in this case, has a series of waves before it pulls back, does that correction before moving into the next one. If we were to go back to the first C structure on a smaller time frame, instead of a week candle, I'm on a 3-day candle, you can see it does have a series of waves before the pullback begins. The series of waves here, of course, is more dramatic. Here is that pullback. It comes up to a resting point before moving into the next structure, which is D, and D is the peak, the first peak. And as you can see here, it is higher than the E peak. This is something that can happen. It's not too often that it does happen, but it is always a possibility. So what does E do? E is the topping structure. It comes to a peak and then begins its decline. Now, this time it takes place on a more horizontal orientation versus a more vertical one, which it did last time. But what does F do? It winds its way down to a point before going into the bull run structure, which is beginning the whole series of fractals all over again. So it goes into A. What does A do? A is a series of waves as it moves up. B, it moves up, does that pullback, does that correction, comes to a little resting spot before moving into C. What does C do? C is the same thing as B pretty much, just more aggressive. Another pullback, moves up, comes to a resting point before going into D. D is the first peak, which we see here, and then E. So we are currently in E. So what does E do? E comes to a peak. Sometimes D is higher, but usually it is E that is the higher point. So do not let anyone convince you that this is the beginning of this. We are not here, folks. We are in structure E. Structure E is the topping structure. Eventually, it will move down into F. Now, I don't know if F is gonna play out exactly like this. This is just a visualization of what F has done in the past. Every time a fractal repeats, the timing, the height, and the depth, they're going to be unique. You know what? If we were to take this first part of the structure and copy each of these fractals and adjust them to the timing, height, and depth over here on this part of the chart, it would look something like this. Now, some parts I had to stretch out, but as you can see, it does the basic idea of what it should be doing. Now, like I told you before, every time it plays out, it's an original iteration, so that is why it needs to be adjusted. Some parts of the fractal may be exaggerated, like this part took a really long time, and this part took place in a short amount of time. So those differences need to be accounted for when copy and pasting the fractal. But like I said, overall, it does the basic idea of what it should be doing. So here we are in the most recent run-up, and this part right here, now I don't know how high it will go. Let's zoom in on this a little more. Here we are zoomed in. Now I don't know how high this will go. When I first did a video on the repetitive structure of this chart, I made the mistake of assuming it was a smaller iteration of this structure, but as it has continued to play out, it has shown that it is playing out on a larger scale than what I initially thought. I could be making the same mistake again here. I don't know if it's going to go to here. It could be less. It could be more. This decline could look something similar to this. It could be smaller. It could be larger. It could, at any point, any of these moves up could be exaggerated, could be suppressed. All of this is just speculation, so view it as speculation, but it can give you a rough idea of what we have coming down the pike based on the original structure that played out. And it is the original structure that these newer iterations are essentially copying. Now, every time it plays out, it's unique, the timing, the height, and the depth, all that, and that will give it a unique appearance. So at best, this is just a very rough idea. It could look something quite different from this, but essentially, we are coming to a peak, whether it is here, here, or here. It's going to come to a peak. It's not going to be the beginning of a bull run like we see over here. It will eventually get to this point, but it has to go through the decline first. So do not let anyone convince you that we are somewhere here or here or here. We are not. We are in the latter stage of this bull run structure. Now, it's going to decline, and there's a lot of interesting stuff going on with other index charts such as the Dow and even the US dollar index, the DXY. We have some interesting times coming up. Now, I don't know if all this will decline at the same time the Dow declines. You can watch a video I did on the Dow and the 10-year yield over here. How this all relates to one another is yet to be seen. I'm interested to hear your thoughts on the matter. You can put them in the comments. Anyways, this is where we are at on the XAU chart, the gold chart. It could play out different than what I have drawn here. This is just a rough idea. So that is what I believe we have coming down the pike. We are near the peak. I don't know where the peak will be, but we are in the latter stage of this bull run structure. Let me clean this chart up. Well, I hope you found this video interesting and helpful. If you did, it'd be much appreciated if you hit that thumbs up button. You know, this is not financial advice. I'm not a financial advisor. If you did enjoy this video and you're not a subscriber, I recommend hitting that subscribe button. I'll continue to update this chart as it continues to develop. I know most TA that you find on gold, it's very bullish right now. And I understand their thinking. If you take into account inflation and all that, it does make for a very bullish narrative. So at least consider what you saw today. Keep it in the back of your mind. Next time you hear that bullish analysis of gold, just remember this right here. I'm not saying that gold will not go into a bull run. Gold will go into a bull run. It just needs to finish its topping structure and do that pullback. Then it will go into the new bull run, and that bull run is going to last a long time, most likely. This is a slow-moving chart, folks. This is the big picture of the gold chart. I'll end it there. I'm so glad you caught this video. I hope you catch my next one. Have a great day, and bye for now.